Get ready to uncover truths and reality of today's politics. Here's your host, Lori Mills.
Welcome to Uncover California. I'm Lori Mills, your host. We got a busy day today, so we're going to not do a big intro and we're going to get right into it. On our first guest today, we're going to talk about election integrity. I have Professor David Clements on, and many of you may remember him from the Lindell Symposium. He's never backed down off the election fraud, and he's got a lot of receipts, guys. I've said for a long time, I don't believe that the 2020 election was safe and secure, and I'm in California, so I don't think any election is safe and secure. But I want his perspective, so he's going to be our first guest. Then we're going to get into Lawfare. And basically what's going on in Utah, folks. I thought Utah was supposed to be the clean, sparkly, faithful-filled state. Well, it seems like the cabal is very deep there. And come to think of it, Mitt Romney's from there, so shouldn't be too surprised. But when you find out that the man that ran for governor, Phil Lyman, the attorneys that went after him also went after Tim Ballard when he decided to run for Senate. Boy, is it getting convoluted, folks. I want you to stay tuned because Tim Ballard is an innocent man. The allegations against him were false, and we're going to get into all of it. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. So our first guest today is libertarian-leaning law professor out of New Mexico, Professor David Clements. He once ran for U.S. Senate, and he is an attorney, but he wasn't at first necessarily a fan of Trump. You guys will remember him from the Lindell Symposium, where he basically compared the 2020 election to a crime scene, and it was quite entertaining. So anyways, we're going to bring him in right now. Professor David Clements, welcome to Uncover California.
It's good to be with you.
Well, I first got to know you basically in 2020 when all the election fraud hearings were going on. That was my first introduction to you. And it's my understanding you're a professor, you're an attorney. And how did you get involved with Mike Lindell and everything that happened in 2020?
Well, I was pretty much one of the few people out there with credentials that was saying out loud what most of you already suspected, that there was something wrong that took place on November 3rd, 2020. I had 8 first-degree murder convictions, helped take down a drug trafficking organization. And so I had all the awards and the accolades. And I was just astonished with how quickly I was censored and antagonized, and people just went after me in the press. And so I, instead of running away from the conflict, started digging in. And so early on in 2021, I probably had the best library of long-form interviews with people that most people know who they are now, but at the time it was kind of the ugly, dirty lift on people that filled out affidavits and attorneys that filed lawsuits. And I was trying to reconstruct a case, much like I would have done as a trial attorney. And after I had a body of work that was out there, Michelle Bachmann, former Congresswoman, had me as an expert on a panel with other people like the Hoff brothers from the Gateway Pundit. And I think Mike must have heard of me through that event. I'm really not sure how he heard of me, but in short order, right about a week before the Cyber Symposium, which was the first opportunity for everyone to kind of compare notes. And by no means was all the information there completely ferreted out, but that's how I first met Mike. And since then, I've met just a motley crew of just all kinds of wonderful people in the movement.
Wow, it's crazy. You know, I to this day don't think, oh wait, he's telling me to time out. Oh, he wants to fix me.
Sorry.
Okay, but we'll continue on.
Yeah,
People,
continue right
yeah.
where you're at.
That's Eric.
Hi.
Okay, so from that time to this day, I still think the 2020 election was stolen. I just do. I'm from California. We have so many problems here. And I can tell you as a citizen, we've got mass mail-in voting, which I think is a huge problem. Because what they do here in California is we all get ballots probably a month before the election, and it goes to the entire populace. I've had friends that have received multiple ballots. Well, in 2022, I ran for the state assembly here because I was censored like you. I spoke about the Hunter Biden laptop case, and that was it. They took my business pages. They took everything from me. And at that point, I walked away from everything, and truth is all I've cared about. I was one of those that actually watched the hearings with people with their affidavits. But the one thing here this year that I noticed is in 2020, they took the California model nationwide, meaning the mass mail-in voting. And here I can tell you this last election cycle, we spent a month curing ballots. And what that means is, and I'm sure you're already aware, but for those of you out there that don't, is once the ballots get to the county, they take them out of their envelopes, and if the envelopes don't match, well, they're kicked out. Well, the Democrats have a machine to cure. And the Republicans on our side, I mean, there were a few of us volunteers going through this. Not only that, I canvassed my neighborhood, probably about 800 homes, to low propensity voters. And what I found was 25% of those voters told me that they always vote, but they voted by mail and their votes never got there. What is your biggest, I mean, you have already reconstructed a crime scene. I watched your documentary, which was fabulous, Let My People Go. I think everybody needs to see that. But what was your experience? I really want your take on the election fraud. And here in California, I mean, we've got this super majority. I have no clue how we're going to stop it here.
Well, it's going to start with an executive order. It has to happen at the federal level. That doesn't mean you'll cure all of the things that are happening on a state ballot, because under every state's constitution, the legislature of your state has the power to set the time, place, and manner of your elections. However, a lot of people have overlooked that Barack Obama, not Trump, designated elections as part of the nation's critical infrastructure. And when you do that, there's requirements that become mandatory. So where you would see critical infrastructure assessments legally required, you see this with like care for a nuclear facility. Well, that same requirement now applies to elections. And so Trump has been messaging to the people first through a meeting with governors at the White House recently, where he says, we got to get to same day voting. We've got to use voter ID. We've got to look at citizenship. And he talked about Elon. We've got to get rid of these machines. They're not secure.
Right.
Now, he's not just throwing that out there for no reason. He has power to issue an executive order, at least to federal races. And what that's going to do is people are going to start seeing, at least with House and Senate races next year at the federal level, that you're not in a 50-50 paradigm. It's going to be more like 80-20 favoring the Republicans. And when people start looking at the difference between the outcomes in the federal level compared to what's going on in the state of California, for instance, they're going to want to model their elections in the same way. And Trump's got a bit of a trump card in that people don't realize that most of the money being allocated for the machines that you use in California, that I use in New Mexico, are the byproduct of HAVA. HAVA basically puts out to the tune of billions of dollars each year the incentives for states to use these rigged computer, tabulators, e-poll books. And when you get sucked into that system, you've got the perfect storm for fraud. And so a lot of people focused primarily on mail-in ballots. They shouldn't just focus on that. They need to look at how the machines basically optimize the environment, give you all the metrics you need to know who's behind, who needs more votes. And then the mail-in ballots, which destroys the chain of custody through these drop boxes, effectively gives you a paper trail that more or less matches. And in California, as Trump pointed out, it took over 2 months before they could quote unquote reconcile those ballots that came in. And that's just no way to run an election. So if you want to solve the problem, you have to get back to closed system architecture. As long as you have open-ended systems where people can infiltrate them through the internet, through jump drives, through fake risk limiting audits, you're going to continue to see selections rather than elections. And so every state, California included, has its own iteration of the cheat. But what people need to realize is that it's death by 1,000 cuts. If you cover up one hole, I can go over here and cheat. If you do this over there, we can make an adjustment. And so what I want your viewers to understand is that this is not like China is hacking into our machines from overseas. It's far more elegant. The Department of Homeland Security, our own government, is what created this system. And they have entered into contracts with your clerks, your Secretary of States, to deploy these things called Albert sensors. These are computers that reside behind your county and precinct firewalls. And we're giving them legal permission to monitor every data point in elections, from absentee ballots to e-poll books to election night reporting, ballots that have been sent out, ballots that have been returned. And with that data, it gives you a perfect picture on where to deploy your mules, where to stuff boxes. And so we need to solve the problem in a holistic fashion. And I think Trump is up to the task.
Well, and I hope he is. I can tell you out here, we've got, oddly enough, a Republican majority. And a couple months ago, one of our supposed Republicans decided to blindside the other Republicans and extended our Dominion voting systems here until 2029 against the voters' wishes. I don't think she's really a Republican. She also signed on to sue businesses that were closed during COVID. We're in big trouble out here. And the supermajority, I don't know if you've heard this week, the Assembly and State Senate here basically kicked all the Republicans off of the committees so we don't have a voice at all. And I don't know how to get around this, but we here in California that are fighting this is my home state. I'm not an implant, and we want to get it back. Now, one thing I found quite surprising and I wanted to talk to you about was the Georgia situation that we all watched. And it's still not been explained to me where the ballots came from that were pulled out from underneath the tables. And we all watched the ballots be run through the machines multiple times. Ruby Freeman, sorry, Ruby, saw you do it. I still haven't had an explanation why that happened. And yet she just won a lawsuit and got a ton of money. What are your thoughts on that? And has Dominion and that cabal come after you as well?
Oh yeah, I'm undergoing my 6th investigation to take away my license. The last one was initiated because I visited Tina Peters in prison, and which is ridiculous that someone
she should
would
be
have the
pardoned.
audacity. She should be, but she can't be pardoned by Trump because it's not a federal crime; it's a state crime, and they have a corrupt governor. So there's things that can be done that are being done for Tina, and none of us are resting until she gets out. But yeah, they've come after me in every single way imaginable. I was an attorney defending a nation-state expert in the curling decision, which is the big case where even CISA had to come out and admit that the tabulators in Georgia were massively vulnerable. And so what happened there is what you see everywhere, which is corruption rules the day. And since you've had Elon Musk come to some sort of power through Doge, you're seeing just how elegant the cheat is. One of the big stories that came out in the past month was USAID basically money laundering, right, through thousands and thousands of media and media adjacent companies. And they have a narrative to suppress and censor people. Well, we're also finding that USAID was donating to the American Bar Association. So think about this. You can create the narrative that destroys people, buries people, censors them, and then you have a judicial regulating body that protects and insulates attorneys and judges that have been on ballots, that have been scanned through Dominion tabulators, that do not want to get to the bottom of it. And so when we launched our documentary, the day of our launch was the same day that Rudy Giuliani got hit with a $148 million verdict. And so, yeah, we're very, very much aware of the lawfare, but we're starting to see the winds change. In particular, there was a statement of interest that was just entered by the DOJ into Tina Peters' case yesterday. They're going to be investigating all kinds of fraud. It's clear that there's been abuse everywhere. But if you look at the sober facts that happened in Georgia, the election board has come around and apologized to their constituents that there was fraud. You had these things called Shaw files, which would have completely exonerated Rudy Giuliani if they didn't hamper his defense. Basically, these are files that you can cross-reference against the tabulators when they're scanning those ballots. And so you can go further than just using a video recording. You can match up everything through a timestamp and put the case to bed. Rudy wasn't allowed to do that. What happened to Rudy was very similar to Tina, which was most of her defenses weren't allowed by the judges. Mm-hmm. Most of the experts that were supposed to testify, I was supposed to testify in that case in Colorado, weren't allowed to testify. And they just never thought they would see the day where Trump would be sworn in. And so now there's panic, and it's not going to let up now. So I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those judgments are vacated in the future. I know that there was a settlement that Rudy reached, which is it's understandable knowing what he's been through. But I think if people just hold out a little longer, you're going to start finding that there's criminal charges that are going to be brought against the dominions of the world. I'm certain of it.
I really hope so. I look at what they've done to a lot of attorneys, John Eastman to be, another one. I mean, they've gone after law licenses and everything else. They've been ruthless. But I think what it's done, because they went too far, they've gone after the public. And it seems to me that those that looked into election integrity, you are the election integrity J6ers, so to say. The USAID fraud, goes so vast and far. They were funding these NGOs that have trafficked children into our country, Catholic Family Services. And, I'm a Christian, so it appalls me that these Christian charities have been sold out to enrich themselves. And it does seem that a lot of this money goes back into Democrat campaigns and everything else. And I'm waiting for somebody to connect it to the Arabella Advisors cabal, because that's all attached. Tell me what you saw in 2020, David. Tell everybody the truth of what happened. You being a prosecutor, you putting a case together, tell everybody what you saw.
I saw vote trafficking. I used to go after drug traffickers, and it's this, if you overlay vote trafficking with drug trafficking, it's the same phenomenon. You've got a cartel that interfaces with local DTOs. And so as long as you have a few people that have access to software and hardware, you can pretty much fix your elections in a way that it doesn't matter if you've got an honest clerk. You can do things that are upstream from the cheat. And I'll give you one example. The dominions of the world are in control of designer software, and that software gets sent to clerks. And a lot of the clerks will tell you that they customize their election software. That's not true. Basically, they prepare a ballot image or a ballot definition file. But there's all kinds of baked in things into that designer software that's given to them. So even if you weren't to have your election systems hooked to the internet, you can have certain switches that are a byproduct of that designer file. And once you have it and you upload it into a tabulator, which is networked through a VPN to all the other machines, you basically can compromise all of the machines through a single point of origin. And people don't realize that. And so it's clear that that happened. The person that verified that was Jeff Lenberg, who's my client. He did the analysis of both Dominion and ES&S machines in Antrim County, where there's a shift of thousands of votes that went from Trump to Biden. He was also the expert that saw in Coffee County that the Dominion machines were remotely accessed, even though they were closed behind a locked door. He's someone who got to see things very closely in Maricopa and was part of our audit team in New Mexico. And you're seeing the same subversive points in the election system. And so what we saw was that we're seeing a massive inflation of the voter rolls, usually 5 months before early voting starts. And that's really when the cheat is masterminded, because you have to have a credit line of fake voters basically having a ballot waiting for them come election time. So 5 months out, you inflate your voter rolls. We were seeing evidences of that being automated, meaning in microseconds, you can have tens of thousands of voters added to your rolls and then purged right after election day. And then about 3 weeks before the election itself, you start fine tuning. And at this point, you have to understand that every state, California included, has absentee ballot tracking software. And so they have a rough tally going at all times of how many registered Republicans got a ballot and how many registered Republicans returned a ballot. In California, you don't get a choice, you just get one. But the point is, you can start modeling very early on what the delta is and what you have to overcome. And so when you get to election day, what happens is they just start fine tuning where they need to go, where they need to stuff through the use of e-poll books. And so a lot of these voting convenience centers, you check in, you don't sign a piece of paper like in the good old days. They actually have your name in there. You just tell them who you are, that you want your ballot, and they can fine tune it that way. And then they've got a fail safe. After you have all of these openings to monitor the data, in most jurisdictions that we've been able to investigate, at the end of election night, keep in mind in California, someone somewhere is going to be at some tabulation center that is onboarding all of those mail-in ballots in these centralized facilities. And in California in particular, you had all kinds of ballots being produced by Runbeck in Phoenix, Arizona. And we had investigators, I say the royal we, I know people that were there, that saw the day after election day this past year, pallets filled with tens of thousands of mail-in ballots, and they were being sent to California. They were being sent to Utah, Nevada, Colorado. And at the time, you had at least 20 Republicans running for House that were in the plus column. And every single one of those Republicans, as the ballots kept coming in, the results changed to favor the Democrats. And so when you understand that architecture, at the end of I guess the count, you need to do a reconciliation between the paper and the computers. And so usually what will happen, you'll have clerks that will retrieve from those tabulators the data that's on them through jump drives. And they do this to quote unquote preserve the air gap. These are supposed to be closed systems. And then they'll upload the data onto an internet connected election management system that every county has. Mm-hmm. And what people are realizing is that when you upload that data, there is a read-write capability where a centralized authority, your Secretary of State, can overwrite and backfill all of the data. And we've confirmed this through documentation in many, many states. And so whether you want to hack it before, whether you want to breach a system during an election, or perhaps you've screwed the pooch and you've got to wait till after election day, you have the ability to run it through that software. They send that data back down to your counties. And when they do their canvass, the clerks are all acting like this was their original data. No, it's data that was sent up for election night reporting and then sent back down to them. And so there is virtually no point during the election that isn't being touched by the ability to modify that data. And so the proof that there is manipulation is this thing called a cast vote record summary. And our audit team actually did cast vote record analysis in San Luis Obispo County, and we saw what is known as a PID control. This is a predictive closed feedback system, much like you would see with cruise control in your car or your thermostat. It's trying to find a predetermined set point. And what you would see in the voting records within this cast vote record summary is, come hell or high water, the votes would be arranged in a certain sequence that defied natural behavior. And so if we can, when we can get a hold of those types of records, we don't have to guess as to whether your machines have been subverted or your software has been screwed with. We know it for a fact. And when we bring this to the attention of certain authorities, of course, they don't want to look into it because many of the people that are in law enforcement, like the sheriffs, appear on a ballot. So they've got a vested interest to not investigate something that could determine that they're illegitimate. And that's been the biggest obstacle to our efforts. It's not the proof, it's not the data. It's that you've got a lot of people that are willfully ignorant. Probably be the best way to put it.
Well, that is just crazy. Well, David, we're already out of time. I can't even believe it. I would love for you to come out and talk to our county. I'll text you for that. But let everybody know about your documentary, and also let them know where they can find you. And I would love to have you come out again and meet us in person. And I want to thank you, sir, for everything that you're doing.
You're welcome. You can find me at theprofessorsrecord.com. That's all one word, theprofessorsrecord.com. And the movie, Let My People Go, is right there on the website. You can find it on YouTube and Rumble. And if you go to the bottom of that webpage, it's got all of my social media handles. So you can follow me on X or Truth or Facebook or any of those places.
Okay, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody else, stay tuned. Our next guest is a guy that ran for governor in Utah. And let's just say there's a lot of corruption there, and we're going to break it down and we're going to expose it. And it seems funny enough to be tied to the Tim Ballard case. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the MAGA Mall. We have the largest selection of the finest quality MAGA caps and Trump caps that are made. We have over 250 hats and 1,000 different products in 28 product categories. All the caps are made from premium cotton twill. Everything on them is embroidered. As a matter of fact, in the last election cycle, we donated over 45,000 caps to Trump-endorsed candidates and conservative causes all the way across America. And you can buy any of our products by going to our website. It's at themagamall.com, like on the sign over here, and use promo code CALI, and that's for Uncover California. That will get you a 10% discount off of all of our products and also help this worthy cause. And remember, it's always a MAGA day at the MAGA Mall.
Okay, our second guest today is former governor candidate Phil Lyman. Well, you know what? Phil was attacked by Lawfare, and he's currently running for the GOP chair in Utah. I'll tell you what, you guys, there's a cabal in Utah. They went after Tim Ballard. They went after Phil Lyman. We got big booms coming up. Phil Lyman, welcome to Uncover California with Lori Mills. It's good to have you here, sir.
Well, thanks, Lori. It's good to be on.
So who knew that Utah, which should be a state of faith, has become so corrupt? What's going on in Utah?
Well, I knew it.
Well, I'm in California. I thought we were the,
Yeah, I've been going through, I kind of set out on a path to take on the corruption back in 2009 when I saw it come to my own little rural community. And it just one thing kind of led to the other. And you like to think that the enemies are, the big environmental groups or the globalists, but it's hard when you find out that it's right here in Utah and sometimes right in your own, Republican Party,
Yes.
people that are selling you out. So.
Well, funny enough, I ran for the state assembly in 2022 out here, and then, hated the way that I was treated as a candidate from the party. So we actually ran a slate of candidates and flipped the Republican Party to MAGA by 98%. But it seems there's a few that have infiltrated. And I'll tell you what, people you thought you were your friends are not your friends. And good thing I have 5 dogs at home.
Well, what I've found is that the people, just your average person on the street, they know a heck of a lot more about what's going on than they get credit for. And then I've been in the legislature the last 6 years, and the legislature just really gets kind of, they drink their own bathwater. Pretty soon they start believing that they are the authority on all these things, and that the people don't really know what's going on. So I found my biggest friends are just your average person.
Now, you ran for governor, and
Right.
this
Yeah.
cabal came after you. And funny enough, and we'll get there, there's a lot of intertwinings with people that ran for power that certain people didn't want in power. You said you're in the legislature. Are you in the state Senate? Are you state assembly? Or
House
what are
of
you?
Representatives. Yeah, in Utah,
Okay.
it's the House.
Okay. Okay. And you've served for 6 years?
Right. So I couldn't run for governor and my position in the House. So I'm not in the legislature now. I'm done with that.
Okay. So you tried to run for governor. Tell everybody your story and what happened to you.
Well, I ran for governor and I won. I won at the convention with nearly 68%. Anything over 60%, you go straight to the general ballot. There is no primary. But since the governor's in charge of elections through the lieutenant governor, they decided that they could put themselves on the ballot through the signature gathering process, which is an end run around the party, but you have to get 28,000 signatures. And now 2 audits have come out to show that he didn't get his 28,000 signatures. He shouldn't have had a primary ballot. And even on the primary election, he won with 54, it was 54 to 46. And right off the bat, the statistical analysis of that would indicate that there was some manipulation of the votes on the front end. And I've said that from the beginning, but of course we can't, he's in charge of that as well. So you can't look at any of the voter rolls. You can't look at any of the voter records, any of the election returns. You get some canvassing reports. There was one county that hired a statistician to come in, and they deputized them. And so she was able to do a really thorough analysis. And she called me about halfway through and she said, if you haven't conceded, don't, because there is some real problems. And of course, when you talk about election interference, you can't prove it because all you can do is statistically see it. So anyway, long story short, we ran as a write-in candidate because we said we're going to verify the results of this election, whether we win or lose, and we couldn't verify the results. So we ran as a write-in, and I ended up getting the most write-in votes of any candidate in U.S. history with a little over 200,000 write-in votes, which doesn't mean a lot if you don't win with that write-in, but still it was pretty significant. A lot of people that are paying attention.
Now, Lawfare hit your front door. Now, Governor Cox, that's his name, correct?
Yeah.
He's got a couple attorneys that intermingle with another case going on in Utah right now, and we can get into that other case in a second. What did they do to you?
Well, really interesting. So, I mean, I've known Tim Ballard, and I've been an admirer of Tim's for a long time. He wrote some really great books, and then his speeches that he would give, and then the movie Sound of Freedom was amazing. But I didn't have much to do with him until about a week before the general election. On my X account, I had some people start asking me these questions. Utah deserves to know how you feel about Tim Ballard. And all I said was, I felt like the allegations against him were very politically timed. And of course, I didn't know who I was talking to. And then a few other people jump on, and then a couple of, this Alan Rasmussen is like coming at me with explain this and tell us about this, Phil. And I'm like, I don't know anything about that.
So
I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's back it up a little bit because
Yeah.
the audience may not know what you're talking about or who you're talking about.
Right.
So Tim Ballard, his life was portrayed in Sound of Freedom. He's been on the show before. Great guy. Basically, he decided to run for senator shortly after the movie came out. And suddenly all of these sexual misconduct claims came out against him. And to me, I was like, oh, here we go, more Lawfare, another Kavanaugh. So from there, you started getting these X comments. Where do you stand with Tim Ballard? So go on with that. Sorry.
Yeah, so I
just
didn't
wanted
quite
to
get
back
to
up.
the
Yeah.
punchline of that. So then I get a call later that evening. This went for the whole course of a whole day. And I was just treading lightly because all I knew is there was some people that were asking questions. Well, then I get a call from somebody close to Tim and said, did you realize that those are the accusers, Tim's accusers? And did you know that Alan Rasmussen or Alan Mortensen is their attorney. And I mean, he was acting like a seventh grade troll on here. And I said, no, I had no idea. And then that got into a conversation with this person. And then she finally said, you should come and talk to Tim. And so I did. And after talking to Tim, and of course, I had already drawn my conclusion that whatever else might be the truth, the only thing I knew that was true is that this was a politically motivated character assassination. And I wasn't in a position to really take a hard stand for Tim or against him. But finding out that Sean Reyes went down for the same thing, he was our attorney general. And the day that he announced that he was not going to run for attorney general, these same accusers dropped him from the lawsuit that they had against him and Tim Ballard.
What were they accusing Reyes of?
The same thing as Tim Ballard, just misappropriation of funds, inappropriate use of government resources. And I think it goes much deeper than that, sexual harassment, intimidation, all of these things.
So the same women accused Reyes that accused him with
was
the
a single
same
lawsuit
attorneys.
a single lawsuit with, I think there were 3 women that were listed, and it was brought by Suzette Rasmussen, who was another attorney that was Governor Herbert's attorney and Governor Cox's attorney as the lieutenant governor, and then this Alan Rasmussen. So to find out that it's Utah attorneys that are behind this attack on me, and that they're also the same ones that were attacking Tim, that tells me everything I need to know about their ethics and their morals as well. But then to find out that they were the same attorneys that went down to Colombia to extort or bribe or coerce Pedro, and then all of these stories that are coming out, and it's just swirling around. And it's like, why are 2 Utah attorneys closely connected to Cox? What are they doing down in Colombia with a briefcase full of cash, trying to get Pedro to sign a statement against Tim Ballard that he wouldn't sign? And again, all the story that's behind this, I don't have firsthand experience, and all I know is the political side of this, which was really, it was so obvious. It was just so obvious, and that's what I said to Alan. I said, I don't know the truth of very many things, but I do know that you've been dishonest with me. You were coming at me with a text that was clearly photoshopped and asking me to explain it, but it wasn't a text between me. It was a text between 2 other people. It was just really dirty. I just thought it was so dirty, and that I guess brought me to the conversations that I was having with Tim, and those conversations really opened up just shed a lot of light on what was happening
Pandora's
here.
box.
A political hit job.
Yeah, and a Pandora's box. And if you think about it, and people back up again, Pedro is the boy that his life was betrayed in Sound of Freedom. He was Simba in the film. He was the one on the island that the traffickers tried to go and assault. Well, these same attorneys that have accused Tim Ballard and also went after Phil here, they went down to Colombia. Pedro, this boy, has now sued these attorneys, claiming that they bribed him to set up Tim Ballard, which is a huge problem. And again, a conflict of interest. And it's my understanding, Phil, and correct me if I'm wrong, are these attorneys now taking down their social media?
Yeah. So shortly after all of this started to come out, they took down all their social media accounts. The other thing, when they brought the charges, when they announced the charges against Sean Reyes and Tim Ballard, mainly against Tim Ballard, they did it on the steps of the Capitol with a lot of fanfare. And as I watched Suzette Rasmussen doing her song and dance on the steps of the Capitol, it rang very false to me. It's like, this is theater. This is putting on a show. And then they take down their social media accounts. That's to me, that's pretty telling.
Yeah, it's very telling to me. Now, how is Mitt Romney involved in this? Are there bigger names involved? Is there a cabal in Utah that is trying the establishment trying to keep power that is going to take out anybody that gets in their way? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, Mitt Romney was the sitting senator. He hadn't announced that he wasn't going to run when Tim, kind of leaked that he was going to run. So this came from Tim. It came from Axiom, the lobbying firm, Mitch McConnell's lobbying firm, kind of the ones that support Romney and kind of that moderate wing of the Republican Party, if we can be
I
nice
don't
about
even
it.
know. I would say the globalist, in my pocket first party.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
who's probably making money on the trafficking of children. Let's put that out there.
well, you take this to its, to its logical conclusion, and these guys are standing in the way of really investigations on this, abuse of children and trafficking of children. And I don't know how far that goes into, protecting guilty people, et cetera, et cetera. But it definitely is a really effective tool politically, kind of the Kavanaugh experiment of saying, well, let's just go after them and make all these allegations and they'll just go away. So in that respect, they were very successful because Tim immediately kind of fell out of the limelight. The most troubling, and you're probably going to talk about this, was the church's involvement. And this was the church media department. It's not the head of the church. It's not the what I would say the official position, but a lot of people with a lot of authority high up threw Tim under the bus really hard. And I think there were some people that were manipulated there. And that's, being in Utah, and that's such a prevalent part of the culture, that as soon as the church whispers about something or comes out and says, condemns Tim Ballard, then there's so many people that's like, okay, well, that's all I need to know. If the church took that position, then he must be guilty, and I'm
Right.
and I'm going to withdraw all my support, which a lot of people did. And
Well, which is unfair. And if we look at what's happened now, I've interviewed Oscar Blue, who's been through the Darien Gap 5 times. I've interviewed J.J. Carroll. I've interviewed Tara Lee Rodas, HHS whistleblower. And what we've been seeing, which is very disturbing, and especially now with the USAID fraud coming out, a lot of these Christian charities have been paid billions of dollars on the trafficking of children. And, unfortunately, the Lord tells us there will be wolves in sheep's clothing, and you will know them by their fruit. And I'm not seeing a lot of good fruit here. I mean, there's people in my church and in every church, there are good people that are just truly seeking the Lord. But then you get the power structures involved, and it becomes more about the religion than the relationship with Christ. And when we're watching people involved in these institutions, basically working on the actual trafficking of children, which Tim has been fighting for decades, something doesn't smell right to me, Phil.
Well, and then on top of that, Utah was aggressively promoting illegal immigration, going to Denver, making deals. The sheriff in Salt Lake County came out and said, hey, with an email that was leaked, we need all hands on deck at the airport. The governor's made this deal, and we've got all this plane load of illegal immigrants coming in. Well, it's illegal. That's called human trafficking.
Right.
But that opened up the reality that Governor Cox is not passive in promoting things that are feeding the whole industry, whether it's fentanyl or cartels or human trafficking. All of that seems to be more likely to be protected in Utah and lifted up than to be fought by the official groups.
And let's be real here. There's currently, that we know of, at least 350,000 children missing in our country that came across that border. And that doesn't include the children that have disappeared within our own borders. And it's pretty, I talked to J.J. Carroll about that, he was chief border patrol down in the San Diego sector. And when Joe Biden came in and he saw what was happening, he said, I'm out. And he left. But a lot of things that people don't talk about. Yeah, we've got the sex trafficking, but we've also got organ harvesting. And this is a multi-billion-dollar business that I think is second to the drug trade, and it surpassed the arms trade. So I want Utah to be doged. I think this doge that we have going on has to happen nationwide, and the corruption has to be rooted out, because if it's not, evil's going to prevail in our country, and we can't allow that. And if you say that you're a man of God or the head of a church and you are promoting the trafficking of children and you are accusing people, trying to stop it and trying to take down anybody that's trying to take power from you, I'd hate to be you the day that you stand at those pearly gates and Jesus looks at you and says, "Depart from me, I never knew you," because that's what's coming. That is what's coming.
Yeah.
So what now, Phil? What now? Because I mean, are you going to run for governor again? What is your mission moving forward here?
Yeah, I am going to run for governor again. And I just wanted to say that, these really horrible topics that become politicized. And I think that's a weapon of the left, is like, let's talk about these things in purely political terms when at the same time you've got children whose souls are being ripped away from them.
Yes.
And horrible, horrible things. If you think about the life of one of these trafficked victims, we've got to get the reality. And I feel an obligation, Lori, to explain things. I think Jesus Christ, he did such a good job because he taught in parables, but he taught in ways that people could actually grasp it and understand it. We owe that to people in politics. We owe it to them to explain it. So, and it's really hard when you've got all these narratives flying around. But I got into the fight way back, and it took me from the county commission to the state legislature to running for governor. I am running for the state party chair right now because it's coming up in May, and it also I was frustrated with the GOP for not standing up for their candidates. So
Yeah.
we need to fix those things, and we need a platform that we can talk about things in a real way. And in Utah, there are so many good people, so many good, honest people who are kept from the truth simply because they don't know where to find it. And if the GOP doesn't step into the light and say, we are going to stand for those values that are in our platform and that are in the Constitution, then I don't know, I would feel like I've shirked my responsibility and my duty. So we've got, running for the chair, planning to run for governor in 3 years, start running in 3 years. And that's what's on the docket for our campaign.
Well, and I can tell you with the party, like when I ran, the opposition to me, what I noticed was the party would install someone. They would have their chosen few, and nothing was really fair. And the candidate support wasn't there. So I decided to run for my county party, and I'm now the current vice chair of the Ventura County GOP. And we've got our floor fight for the new board at the California GOP this cycle. One of the reasons I ran is I'm sick of being the controlled opposition. I'm ready to go on offense. We're fighting a media that lies to the American people. We need to speak the truth, and we need to speak it boldly, and we need to be unapologetic about it. And I think that there's those that are the country club politicians that they just want to go along to get along. And it's not okay. I think that's why our country is in such trouble. Thank God President Trump was elected, but look at the mess that we are trying to clean up now. And for the Democrats to say, "Oh my gosh, Trump destroyed the economy. He's only been in office a month," folks. We got a lot of work to do. What is your opinion on the position of the party and what you would like to see? I personally am a honey badger. There are powers that be that want to shut me up, and trust me, they're trying everything they can to do that. I will never be silenced. I will never back down, and I will never surrender. Where are you with this, sir?
Yeah. Well, 3 months ago, there were any number of genders. Now there's two genders.
There always
And
was
it's
to
amazing
me.
what one person coming into office and telling the truth can do to everybody else. So Trump, I believe, like you said, it's a beautiful thing that he was elected, and he's telling the truth, and Doge is pushing on these things, and hopefully it emboldens conservatives around the country to say, what, we have been believing a false narrative that the emperor actually has clothes.
Exactly.
And when that starts to evaporate, that mass hysteria, when it goes away in a really dramatic way. And and I believe that we're at that point. I think that people are going to wake up. Clearly, we're not. The fight is not over. The other side is going to ramp up, but it's becoming much more black and white. And you're either dealing in the light or you're dealing in pure darkness. And uh, you know, Thomas Paine said, the closer a disease gets to a crisis, the closer it is to a cure. And so if it gets worse, that's good news because it's going to get better. If it starts getting better right now, then it's a blessing to be part of it and to see it happen. But I tell people it's not my fight; it's the fight. It is
Yeah.
the eternal fight. So,
And I agree with you. Like, my pastor always says, a lie cannot stand in the light of truth. And I think that that's profound. And the way that I don't think people really realize how close we came to losing this country. I don't think that we could have done another 4 years of Kamala Harris. I really don't. Our borders were wide open, which the Democrats denied, but now we've gone from 150,000 crossings a month to 8,000. That's a 95 or 6% down. And the way that they are screaming about DOGE just tells me that they don't want to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. And the fact that every single Democrat in Congress voted to keep men and women's sports and blocked that vote says everything that I need to know. This is not a fight against Democrat versus Republican. This is a fight of good against evil, and a lot of people that have basically been lied to who haven't woken up to the truth yet. And I want to say to any Democrat out there, we don't hate you. We love you. But open your eyes, do your own due diligence. Don't believe everything that you hear on the media. And Phil, isn't it funny? Did you see the video that came out this morning of all the Democrats doing the exact same talking point?
No, I haven't seen it, but
oh my goodness, you need to watch it.
It plays over and over.
Well, it's all
Every
of them,
scenario.
and it's the same script. If you've ever seen the video of the media where it's like all the one news reporter, then there's the second news reporter, and it just grows, and they're all saying the same thing. They did that today, but it's the Democrats. It's Elizabeth Warren, it's Booker. Oh, you got to see it. But the bottom line is, I don't know who the person is. Somebody comes out with a talking point every day. They come out with your word for the day, and everybody repeats it, whether it be constitutional crisis, whether it be chaos, and they all say the same thing over and over and over again. And I think after the Twitter files, we all know now, if you do your research, we basically had a psychological operation on our country. And I believe that we faced a color revolution. And with the USAID money coming out now, it's very clear to see that that's exactly what happened in 2020 was a color revolution. It was death by 1,000 cuts, and they were trying to finish the job. And again, I'm a staunch supporter of Donald Trump, so I'll never back down off that. I don't care what anybody thinks. I'll wear my MAGA hat in California, and everybody can deal with that. But the truth is so important, and I think that the people need to know, don't be afraid. The more of you that speak out, the braver the populace will become. The perfect love casts out all fear, according to Scripture. So God's got our back. We just need to step out in faith. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is the time. It's the time to do that, to cease to equivocate and simply just tell the truth, the unvarnished truth, and not in a hateful way. We don't have to do that. And we've been on defense for at least the last 4 years, and really for the last couple of decades. And I think people are done with it. We talk about the media. I don't know too many people in my circle that really even pay any attention to mainstream media anymore. I think they're done. People want to tune into programs like yours. I get my news from social media. I go on and granted, there's lots of nonsense on there, but I can glean. I'm an intelligent being, with a brain, and I can look and I can pull things out and I can make connections. And so people who want the truth right now, there's never been a time where you can really get it. God bless Elon Musk for stepping in and rescuing free speech in this country, but I'm right there with you. And now is the time. Now's the time. Win or lose.
Well, and remember, they took our voices in 2020. Again, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter under Jack Dorsey, and they silenced me. I was banned from everything. They took my business pages down that had nothing to do with politics, and now, unfortunately, they're stuck with me here. So I guess they'll have to deal with that because my business was destroyed. So anyways, Phil, Tim Ballard's innocent. I truly believe that. I hope that these attorneys and those that have prosecuted him pay for that. Any final words to the audience? Where can people find you? And that's about it.
Yeah, we've got a website still, Lyman for Utah, FOR Utah. We're updating it with information. And it's funny, even though my campaign's over, all the people that were enthused about it have remained enthused, and they're all pushing. So the campaign's still active, lymanforutah.com, and on all the social media platforms, X and Facebook and Instagram, and you can find us there.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I have you on notifications now, so every time you post something, I'm going to see it. So I'll look forward to having you on again, and I want to thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks, Lori, and really thank you for stepping in the gap and doing what you're doing. It means more than I think anyone will ever really know.
Lord provide. You guys go to uncoverkelly.com, and this is not a good paying job. So if anybody wants to help me out a little bit, uncoverkelly.com. Okay, Phil, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, that's our show for this week. Stay tuned. Next week, we're going to have an in-studio guest, one of my favorite people, Buzz Patterson, Lieutenant Colonel, retired. He carried the nuclear football for Bill Clinton, and he's always fun to have on. Again, make sure you follow us on Rumble, and make sure you hit like, and follow me on X, at Lori Mills for CA42, and go to uncoverkelly.com. Drop us $25. We need your help. Anyways, have a great day. Bye. California.